Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. Perfect. Well, Lama, thank you for that lovely introduction. And it's so true. I think this has been such an incredible journey for me at this sort of stage of my career to be given the opportunity to build a company. And the purpose of today is really that I just wanted to share that journey with you and some of the key learnings along the way. But we're going to start deep. We're going to start with childhood. So, I grew up internationally as a third culture kid. You might be able to tell from my accent that I spent most of my childhood in the UK. I lived in a place called Cheshire, which was in the northwest, very English. I think we were the only brown family for miles and miles on end, especially 20 years ago. And after that, at the age of 14, I moved to India, New Delhi, which is where my heritage is from, but not having really spoken the language and grown up in a very sort of English community, going back to sort of the motherland, if you will, was a really, really interesting cultural experience and learning opportunity. And I think it was those 2 years living in India, really appreciating the education that I had, that made me realize that whichever career path I wanted to pursue, I wanted it to have impact. And I wanted to use my education to fuel that impact as well. So I finished my studies in Singapore. I lived there for 2 years as well, and that was another fantastic experience, learning about a completely different culture and different type of society. However, I think through all these years of my education, there was one common thread, which was my love for the subject of physics. So that's what I went on to do at university. So as I said, it was really, really my dream to be a physicist. In fact, I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And I'd always felt like physics was the perfect combination of my love for maths and kind of understanding how the world works and being able to just explain things. However, pretty much from the first term of first year at university, I went to Imperial College London. The degree wasn't what I expected it to be. And for those of you who are also unfamiliar with the UK university system, it's very, very niche and specialized, and there's not much wiggle room, again, so to speak, meaning that I was locked into this degree. And I think in combination with not feeling a sense of belonging when I spoke to the PhD students, the professors, the postdocs, and also having moved around so much and having some gaps in my maths knowledge, I really struggled. And this was not just, I might not get the best grades, but it was bigger to me because I really felt like I'd had a huge privilege with my education. I wanted to do something useful, but it was kind of like my purpose was gone. What do I do? So thankfully, I took a pretty proactive approach to deciding, I've had this existential crisis. I better figure out what it is that I can do that will add value in some way. And so I explored any and every career path while at university. I was grossly underqualified, applying for banking, consulting, hedge funds, and literally any job with roles available. Even if I knew nothing about the industry or nothing about the company, I applied because I didn't care and I just wanted to learn. And so it was really through gathering all of these experiences as I navigated my way through university, I started to understand what I wanted out of my career and what I didn't want out of my career. The very first internship I did was in software engineering, which taught me that, yes, I can code, but I don't know if this is what I want for the future. Through that, I kind of found my way into finance and consulting and kind of understanding how companies work and the world works. And I always found it really interesting. But simultaneously, throughout university, I was big into events planning, charity fundraising. I play in a rock band. I was captain of my League of Legends team. So I've always had a pretty wide range of interests. And I think through this whole experience of gaining, these professional experiences, I'd always been fascinated about the companies and how they worked and the things that they were developing. And although there weren't any entrepreneurs in my immediate vicinity, it's not the most common career path, especially straight out of university, I thought it was interesting. But there was no clear opportunity that, I'd be able to start my career in entrepreneurship. However, after the second year of university, I get a cold message on LinkedIn one day. So lesson number 1, always respond to random cold messages on LinkedIn, because sometimes they can be useful. And so basically at the time, I was very much one of those students who would put every career opportunity I'd ever done at any company on my LinkedIn. And I get a message from a student. He was a student at the University of Oxford, and he had just started building a student graduate recruitment-based startup. He was about 3 weeks in, and he wanted 3 things. 1, someone that could code and help him build the platform. 2, someone at a London university who could evangelize around London and get more students onboarded. And 3, someone who wanted to network with the big companies and get them onto the platform so that they could sort of improve their graduate recruitment schemes. Now, I wasn't getting paid for this. I, to be honest, didn't really know what a startup was, but it sounded like a fun thing to try, and so I said yes. Now, this was the first job that I did where I truly felt that this is what plays to my strengths, this is what plays to my skill set, and this is how I can have value. This is what I can really do something impactful. But the problem was, I'll be honest, I didn't love the team, and I didn't love certain aspects of the idea. It was very sort of focused in on certain universities, and some things didn't quite make sense to me. But equally, I knew if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, it was also important to me to not have to be financially dependent on my parents when I finished university. So given this experience, given that I'd figured out, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be in leadership at a company where I'm moving quickly, making decisions and building tech products to innovate. But I can't do it yet because I can't do it, I don't have the financial means to do it. So I came up with a plan. The plan was to finish university, get my degree, work for a couple of years in finance, save up some money, and I was already on track to do so. And then once I was in a position financially where I could support myself and potentially even support the company to begin with, I would build the company of my dreams. So this was the plan. It was all going well until the summer after my 3rd year of university. Now I was on a 4-year integrated master's physics degree. And after the 3rd year, this was the summer of 2020. So COVID had just hit, but I'd secured my grad jobs in finance, so I was pretty relaxed on the career front. I wasn't the best at my physics degree, but I just about scraped the minimum grades I needed to in order to know that, I would have to do really badly in my last year to miss my job offers. So I was feeling relatively relaxed about my final year. But equally, I mentioned I had a lot of extracurricular interests and I did a lot of societies while at university. But the problem was, because of COVID, they were all cancelled. And the thought of just doing physics with nothing else for a year was not a pleasant one. And so at that point, I just decided that what better time to have a side project? I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, if this is something I want to do long term. I've built small things here and there. I wouldn't ever call them startups, but I built small tools during exam period to help people search equations, and I'd come up with ideas but never really taken them anywhere. And I thought this was a risk-free of trying something alongside my studies in my final year and just see what happens. So that was the plan. I put together a team very quickly. I just messaged some of my friends. One of them happened to be pretty much the best developer I know. He didn't have any interest in startups, but I didn't care. And also he was my flatmate, so I kind of forced him into this. But I put together a small team and we started working together. Now, it was a bit of fun. We came up with an idea very quickly, and the first sort of thing that we landed on was a company called Quill, which was a B2B SaaS meeting minutes automation software inspired by my banking internships of taking notes all day long. So, came up with this idea about a week into, first conceiving this idea. One of my co-founders mentioned Y Combinator to me. Now, I knew absolutely nothing about the world of venture capital or Silicon Valley. That was the one career path I didn't explore at all whilst a student. But I went on the website, and if you can't already tell, I'm the type that if I see an apply button, I will click it and apply no matter how underqualified I am for something. And that's what I did. So I saw that there were applications open, even though we'd made really no progress beyond an idea. I figured I'd put in an application. I didn't actually tell my team initially, and when they found out, they laughed at me. At the end, I had to force them to make the video so I could actually submit it. But the expectations were very low. We were simultaneously applying to every internal university-based accelerator program, getting rejected from absolutely everything. So we knew the chances, even for really great entrepreneurs, and YC was pretty small. For a team like ours, we thought the chances were practically impossible. So we applied. About a month went by, forgotten about the application, was too busy getting distracted by these other rejections that were coming through. And then suddenly we get an email back from YC saying that we have an interview. Now, we were very fortunate that we had 2 months from finding out we had the interview to actually having it. And the first thing we did was we spoke to an alumni, explained the situation, the amount of progress we made. He was grossly unimpressed because we hadn't really done anything. He was as confused as we were as to how we got an interview. But he said, okay, you've got time, launch, do something. You need to figure it out. And we took that literally. So the next day, we started writing code, we started building an alpha version, and by the time we had our YC interview, we had Quill running at 15 companies on unpaid pilots, so taking their meeting notes, or attempting to. So when we had the interview, although we were extremely excited and grateful for the opportunity, we also knew deep down that there were a couple of issues with the idea. The first being that this was sort of leaning on deep tech. The core technology was around text summarization, and we were a team of undergraduate physicists who had done sort of intro to machine learning. We were not the best place to be building this, and as such, the alpha version that we released, I know a lot of version zeros of products aren't great, but this product ruined your meeting productivity. It could not take notes to save its life, and we were concerned about that. The second issue was coming back to why any of us even wanted to build a company in the first place. It was about having impact and doing something that played to our strengths. What problem can we solve that other people can't? And the truth was, we didn't really care about meeting minutes. If we actually got funding for it, could we really see ourselves spending the next 10, 15 years trying to build the next big meeting minutes company? The answer was no. But simultaneously, we were absolutely terrified of telling YC that we were thinking of pivoting. So we made the executive decision that we were going to suck it up, pretend like everything was fine, and just go ahead with the interview. Now, I'll skip a little bit ahead in the story, but essentially, we knew that with YC, if you're successful, you get a call. If you're unsuccessful, you get emails. And you have to be available, I think, for 6 hours after you have the interview. And it's, of course, all done in Pacific time, so it was very late for us in the UK. And the night of our YC interview, we ended up getting 4 emails back from the team. The first were kind of just trying to understand, like, are we undergrads, postgrads? They didn't understand our degree programs. They didn't really understand how long we'd been working on this for. They wanted to see a demo, much to our greatest fear. And finally, we get a long email from them essentially saying that, look, we like your team. It's clear that you're able to deliver and move quickly, but we don't like your idea. We've seen companies try this in the past, and it's never really worked out. And you're too early for us to know if you've got a different take on it. So we want to talk to you again in a week, come up with something better, or show us more traction on Quill. Now, this was also our last week of university for the term. It was approaching Christmas, and we had all of our master's thesis deadlines, exams, and now we had the second YC interview. But at this point, we really kind of just got our heads together, thought long and hard about what it is that we wanted to build, what truly, inspires us, and what are we passionate about. And that's when we came up with Clear, which is the company I work on now, version 0. And this was very much inspired by, again, this thinking long and hard, what is a problem that I have faced and I know a lot about? And I realized, well, I have really terrible skin. And I have spent literally every day of the last 10 years on online skincare communities, on Facebook, on Reddit, watching all the YouTubers, following all the skincare influencers on Instagram. I've seen a dermatologist because of my skin issues and been through the whole sort of healthcare side of things as well. And even sort of on a larger scale, it's a massive industry with comparatively little innovation, especially given how much money there is. So I realized there was an opportunity. And in that week, I ended up doing around 60 user interviews, built a landing page with the initial idea. We got about 300 signups. Exams ended at 12 p.m. on the Friday. From 12 till 8, we built the prototype. From 8 till 10, I did 4 user demos, and then 10:30 was our interview. Now, as you can probably tell by where the story is going, we had 0 expectations from this, and the interview ended with the interviewer saying, all right, well, the batch starts in 2 weeks. Incorporate a company in the US, open a bank account, see you then. Do you have any questions? And our first question was, are you sure? And the second question was, well, which idea do you want us to work on? And they were like, well, it's your company, figure it out. And that's how we got into YC. So that's where the journey really started. And it was, I think, in that January where I first met Lauma, started doing user testing, trying to talk to people in the space and be very, very product and customer focused, which was a big mistake that we'd made with Quill. We didn't talk to a single user. We just jumped into building a product that no one really wanted. and we didn't want to make the same mistake. So all in all, we had a really positive experience with YC, and in truth, I wouldn't have been able to start my career as an entrepreneur if I didn't get that opportunity, because the funding mattered a lot. So all in all, we got into YC for the Winter 21 batch. We actually ended up deferring to the Summer 21 batch. There's a whole load of drama that ensues between that period, from making a really bad hire to ending up having to scrap out all the code right before demo day because none of it really worked, and having to self-teach mobile development, which was something that neither me nor my co-founder had done. And we also lost, not in like a death way, but our CTO ended up, as I said, he never really wanted to go down the entrepreneurial route. He was very transparent about that. So dealing with that kind of fallout as well definitely threw us some hurdles. But in the end, we made it. And we built and launched Clear, which is a social skincare app. So as I said, I've suffered with skin issues, and I always wanted a better way of knowing which products were working and really tracking my progress so that I could track that. I could communicate it with my doctor, my dermatologist, or even my friends, my esthetician, but also tied into a social community, because another big problem with this space is the total lack of transparency. It's a heavily marketed industry, and people aren't used to seeing faces without filters, especially during the pandemic. So actually tying this routine tracking into a social community, very much kind of like how Strava works. If you go on your run, you share it with your friends. Similarly on Clear, you track your routine, you share it with your community. And the way that we monetize is through partnerships with skincare brands and retailers. Because another big problem, as I alluded to earlier, is that there is very little data in this industry. And as such, it's not very innovative, whether it comes to marketing, really understanding how consumers use products, but also from a cosmetic formulation standpoint. And because we have progress pictures, we have full ingredients lists, we can do the data analysis to extrapolate which products are really working and use that to fuel innovation in the industry, rather than monetizing via ads and basically selling our users' attention to the highest bidder, which is not what we want to do. So in the time of building Clear, we started in January of 2021. We've hit around 6,500 users worldwide, and that's with no marketing. It's all been organic growth. We launched in June of last year, and I raised our pre-seed in November, which was, I could probably talk for an hour on itself. It was the worst experience of this journey, to be very, very honest. It was probably the first time, and I say this as, a woman who has been the minority on her physics degree and her hobbies. It was the first time where I truly felt that being a young brown woman was an obstacle. And I won't go into the depths of all the reasoning now, but I do think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the VC industry to support more underrepresented founders. But equally, I learned so much from it. And the fact that I'm even in a position at the age of 22 where I could raise money for the company that I'm building, the company of my dreams, is a huge privilege as well. So I'm over it, it's fine. So we hit around 6,000 users in January, and we just secured a big partnership with L'Oreal as well last month. So things are on the up at Clear. But before I leave, I wanted to just share sort of the biggest learning that I've had from this whole experience. And I think that's a learning that rejection and failure is inevitable on this journey, and if anything, it's a sign of growth. I sometimes joke that my job is that of a professional beggar, whether it was day one begging people to talk to me about their skincare routines, begging investors, begging brands, begging, any friends and family to download the app and share it on their Instagrams. There's a lot of chasing and there's a lot of no's along the way. But as with YC, it was the one acceptance we got, even as compared to way less competitive opportunities. And that's what allowed us to be here. It was those few investors that said yes that allowed us to grow the team, build the company at a much better pace, and secure these partnerships. So all in all, it's been a fun 16 months, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more. It's been an absolute pleasure to be at this conference, to meet so many amazing entrepreneurs, people in the startup space, and I want to thank you all for your time.
Thanks so much.